For people with mobility challenges, it can be difficult to find the right balance of assistive technology that provides you with freedom and enough challenge to keep you moving in style. Today, we are looking at a device that does it all with a unique Dutch flair. Hey everybody, this is Chris Brandt here. Welcome to another FUTR podcast. Today we have with us B, who set out to bridge utility with functional design, making mobility cool. The Alinker, a non-motorized walking bike without pedals, is custom designed to challenge society's assumptions about disability, helping people with mobility challenges stay active. Welcome, B.
Hi, Chris. Very nice to be here.
I'm so excited to have our conversation, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting one because, you know, what I know of you, B, you are definitely an interesting person.
Well, thank you. I'm just easily bored. That's what I say generally, and that sort of covers it.
I like that. So on that point, tell me, who is B? Where do you come from? You know, what's your story?
My name B comes, to start with, in my passport it says Barbara Elizabeth, but none of those names ever jived with me. And at a certain time, somebody started calling me B, and I was like, oh, it's so logical. Of course I'm B. I'm just B.
Yeah, you're the kind of person who only needs one name.
Exactly. And then when people ask, like, what are your pronouns? I say, how can I help you? Because clearly you need a way to think about me, and how can I be of service?
Okay. Well, B is as short or shorter than any other pronoun you're going to use, so.
And it rhymes. He, she, be.
And it rhymes.
So
there you go.
It's kind of logical. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, Chris, but never felt home there. And I ultimately left the Netherlands in late 98, early 99. Mm-hmm. And I went to Kenya, and that turned into 10 years international work. But what I found in retrospect a little bit, I wasn't so aware of it in that time, but what I found in retrospect is that I'm a bit of a gender weirdo, as you might get by now, and by my name B and how I explained that. But I never understood why I was a weirdo in my own culture in the Netherlands. And so becoming a white person, placing myself as a white person in a predominantly black people country like Kenya, I was in charge of being the weirdo. I didn't realize it then, but I think in retrospect, that is what drove me into international work, that I was in charge of placing myself as the exception, as the weirdo, in a context where I wasn't mainstream. And that has taught me a lot. And to be visitor, like a guest in countries for years, it is on me, the onus is on me to understand where I am, because I'm just a guest. Right. To understand where I am, what motivates people, what the whole setting is. Not to bring my perspective in and insert that into like what you often see in developing work or something, but really sit back and try to understand what motivates people and what is the situation. After 10 years international work, I came to Canada and have lived here ever since 2008.
You mentioned to me when we were talking before is the idea of practicing kindness, and that's sort of how you go about doing things. Could you talk a little bit about your philosophy around that?
When I grew up as a little girl, you know, people ask you, like, what do you want to become when you get older? And I've always found that a very strange question. I was like, what? As if the choice for my professional direction would make me who I am. I never got that. And I always thought, as a young girl already, like, shouldn't the question be, who do you want to be when you grow up? And who do you want to be is a choice. And in a world that doesn't have a lot of kindness, and everything is measured in money and in greed and in extractive and destructive systems, the one thing that I can do that doesn't cost anything, doesn't require resources, is be kind. Because being kind, practicing kindness is a lot harder than you think. And it's different than the Canadian niceness. That's just shoving stuff under the carpet and, well, let's just pretend this is all good now.
Well, I'm from the Midwest, so we get a lot of that here too.
Well, yeah. But it's that sort of making things go away for the sake of comfort and not disrupting the whatever. I'm very much a disruptor, and I like to get things out in the open, be honest, and be real about stuff. And if you want to practice kindness in the real world, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so it is an ongoing practice, because if I really want to be kind in this world, it inherently means that I need to decolonize myself. Because a lot of the colonized practices that we have are not kind. Not to animals, not to other people, especially if they look different than, a white, heteronormative, white, wealthy guy or something. Anything that looks different than that is sort of fucked. But yeah, so kindness also to those white guys, by the way, because I think they suffer as hard in this system as anybody else. Not as hard, but they also suffer. I think everybody gets traumatized in this system.
Yeah.
So to be kind is really a way of being, and a willingness to constantly be aware, like, who am I in this position? I can do this or I can do that. Or could I do this? What is the kindest thing that I can do at this moment? And so it is really a deep practice daily, every moment of the day.
I want to talk about the Alinker, this product that you built. And, it makes me think about, there's a book, I think it's Transparent Things by Nabokov, where the character is in there, he gets asked, what do you do? He says, don't ask me what I do, ask me what I can do, And I just want to point out to people that you're sitting in your living room, and this looks like a craft person's studio here. You got all the tools and you're ready to go. So I think that says a little bit about some of the things that you can do, right? Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit about what went into the creation of the Alinker?
Well, the fact that I sit in my living room, which is a wood workshop, reflects on the fact that I never chose to be a CEO of a company, and that wouldn't be my choice either, to be honest. But once you invent something, and this happens to a lot of creative people, I think they come up with something and then it works, and then you feel the obligation to, if that does that to people, then I should do more of that. Then I need to bring it to more people. But I never set out to be a CEO. I'm a woodworker. I love woodwork, and I need to work with my hands, otherwise I go insane. Some people would argue I'm already insane, but I take that as a compliment, generally.
It takes a little bit.
Yeah, right.
It's the world that's insane, not you.
That's why I take it as a compliment.
Right.
Well, about awareness, because I practice awareness and kindness, things that people say trigger thoughts. It's not just, somebody says something and then it's like, oh yeah, whatever. But somebody says something and it lands somewhere, because I'm aware of language and trying to catch things. And so when my mother said years ago in 2011, we walked in her little village over the market plain, and she said, while pointing at some people that sat there with rollators and electrical scooters, in the middle of the plain, like little village, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And she said, over my dead body, will I ever use one of those things? I was like, what? You said what? But two things happened in that moment. She said she caught herself on her own judgment about those people. And what it did to me is, like, I realized that medical devices are generally technical solution for a body with a problem. Mm-hmm. And it creates a social divide between people with and without disabilities, because we are not comfortable around disabilities. So if something emphasizes the disability, because it's just designed as a logistical thing for a body with a problem, it emphasizes that we are a body with a problem, which we are not. That instantly became a sort of justice issue for me. Like, if there's a social divide created or amplified by the way medical devices are, that's a justice issue. That's not okay. Right. And I get kind of activated when I see injustice things. So I went home and set out to create something so cool that people would love to use it, and that it bridges the divide.
Yeah.
Because I can go to a bike shop and get a bike, a super cool bike. I mean, you have to pay a little bit more the cooler the bike is generally. But the moment I have a disability, there's nothing cool for me available. Why? And now with the Alinker, people get often think like, "Oh, that's too cool! Like you're too cool to be disabled." Like, really? Tell me what disabled looks like, really, in your assumptions. It really brings out the fact that we do have assumptions about disabilities, and that if you don't fit that mold, you're sort of a disruptor. It's bright yellow too, and then I designed it to look like a sculpture, so it is really cool. But that was the whole point.
One of the challenges for people with disabilities is that oftentimes there's gaps in sort of, like what your capabilities are. They may not. This is a product that sort of fits, for people who aren't ready to be in some sort of fully seated or motorized sort of device, but still have some mobility and actually need to use that mobility to retain that mobility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Alinker is really there to sort of bridge that gap as well, right?
Yes, it does a few things different than the mobility devices that are generally available. It also requires you to work, and we're a little bit trained to just like the moment you get a diagnosis of MS, people hear from the doctor 99% of the time. Get used to the idea of a wheelchair and here's your medication. Instead of saying like, what do you eat? How much do you move? What does your poop look like? And like, what can we do to tend to a body? A body is a living organism.
Right.
And if we don't move, we do not operate well. If you don't activate the brain doesn't know what to do because it's not activated.
Right.
So if we feed this machine, if we feed it crap, then obviously it can't work as it's supposed to work. So there's a lot of logical things that we need to do with our body, and we don't do that. We feed crap in our body, then we don't move because we sit on chairs all the time, and then we get sick and we go to a sick care system to just fix that for us with a little cure. That's not how a body operates.
No.
We need the right fuel, then we need to activate it by keeping it as active as possible because that's how a body operates. We're living creatures.
Well, and another thing that you mentioned there too that I think is really often neglected is that when you start, losing some of your ability to integrate yourself in the world, it's not just a physical problem that comes about. It's actually the mental challenges are really significant too. I mean, if your mobility gets limited and you don't get out and interact with people, that is not great for your brain function as well.
Yes, it's not.
And I think the thing that's cool about the Alinker that I enjoy is that it's not something where you're the person is below eye level. It's at eye level. I think there's a lot of, besides the fact that it's, a beautiful piece of sculpture, which we could put in our house just for that. But there's a lot of like really technical design challenges and lots of thoughtful things that you put into this, right?
As I was developing 14 prototypes to get to the final Alinker, so conceptual prototypes and then pre-production prototypes 7 and 7. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot of things because many people tried the Alinker, the prototypes, and from the feedback that I got from them, I integrated that to create the next prototype. And one of the things that I learned is that 60%, more than half, roughly, people that use wheelchairs can still use their legs. Yet there is nothing designed for them that they can continue to use their legs. And again, if you don't activate your legs where you can, you don't activate your brain.
Right.
Now, very important thing to say, wheelchairs are absolutely fabulous if you really need them. And I really want to say that. I try to emphasize that as much as possible. People in wheelchairs are not the problem.
No.
People at eye level that treat people in wheelchairs in a certain way, that's the problem.
Right.
And I'm hoping that with the eye level of Alinkers and the conversations that we're opening up because we do challenge assumptions about disability, it will also benefit people that use wheelchairs, because it is insane that the moment there's somebody in a wheelchair, we start raising our voices and talk slower to them as if they also lost their brain.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable. Like and I've got a few friends in that use wheelchairs. I think it should be mandatory, actually, in high school or something, to use a wheelchair and go out in the world for a day. You cannot get out. You're 15 years old, get in a wheelchair, go to shopping centers, navigate the world. That should be mandatory, because it's a physical experience. Navigate anything, because it's a jungle of obstacles, really.
Right.
And that's just talking about the physical stuff, but also a jungle of obstacle of how people treat you.
Right.
In my TED Talk, I actually go over that. When Deanie, who lost both her legs, is in a shop to buy a new dress, and she's using a wheelchair at that time, and she has a bad day, and she goes to a shop to buy a new dress. She says, "Bert," her husband, "let's go. I need to buy a new dress. I need to have something to make me feel better." She had a really bad day. I mean, losing both your legs or whatever.
Deanie rolled in, and they were looking around for nice dresses, and this lovely sales lady come to them and said, "Can I help you?" And Deanie said, "Well, yeah, I'm looking for a nice dress." And the woman turns to Bet and says, "Does she like red?"
And in that moment, Deanie realized that losing her legs was only part of the problem. The bigger problem is how people now treat you. And that is something that we're hoping to raise or confront people with. Like, it's not just the people with disabilities that have certain things in their life. Like, you're actually disabling people by the way you treat them.
Right.
To have those conversations come up and have uncomfortable conversations with each other about that, because people with disabilities are constantly exposed to all the discomfort, to uncomfortable comments that they're getting. But let's just turn that around, and let's all be in an uncomfortable space. After all, we are mortal creatures, and shit can happen to us. And in that vulnerability, we have this beautiful connection possibility to truly connect with each other on real things.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we're vulnerable is something that we need to embrace. And then also it becomes maybe a little bit less scary to become disabled, because
you get to still participate in society.
It's not a space where you're kicked in the curb and isolated. Exactly. And that's what we're hoping to do with the Alinker, not just sell bikes, but also to create a safer space with each other by showing up for each other. And frankly, Chris, the thing is, once you're hit by life, you learn a little bit more about life. So why do we isolate and dismiss people that actually know a little bit more about life? It's so backwards, really. So I always say, like, when meeting a Alinker user or potential Alinker users, I meet the best people, because those people have gone through hell and back a few times, generally, by what physically happened to them, what socially happened to them, what mentally happened to them, all that stuff. And then come through it. They've built their resilience. They have learned a little bit about life. They have reclaimed their agency, because over my dead body will I ever whatever. And so I meet the best people. They're stubborn in general, but it's the best people.
Well, you have to be stubborn, right? But I mean, I think society loses out on a lot, by not fully embracing people of all types,
diversity.
And on that point, I think that one of the areas where there hasn't been enough attention paid is on some of these medically assistive devices that you said something that I thought is really interesting, and you talk about it sort of in the context of the importance of design, right? Because, somebody has a disability. Now you say, instead of going and getting that really cool looking bike, they're limited to, maybe a walker or, something, with tennis balls on it or something like that. That's not giving the cool factor. And just because you have a disability doesn't mean you don't want to be cool. in your day-to-day life, right? And so that was a really important piece for you, right?
For sure. Yeah. Because they're not cool, people are rather at the risk of falling and not getting the support that they need physically than using a burgundy red walk.
Right.
Right.
You're here to stomp out all burgundy red in
yes,
medical assistive devices.
That's my personal little pet peeve there. But it is true. Like because of what the devices are, people refuse to use them and are at the risk of falling, which has a lot of consequences for, breaking bones, being unsafe, not going out anymore because your range reduces when you don't have the assist that you need to go out. Mm-hmm. And so if you got a cool looking yellow bike that activates your brain, that puts you at eye level, that mobilizes your leg, I mean, you need to work for it. Your range expands again. People go traveling with it. I see people on the North Pole with an Alinker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, seriously.
Does it fit in the overhead compartment?
No, well, they're on cruise ships to Alaska and like anywhere. Disneyland. They fly to Europe. And people go all over the place, and they were like, "This would have been completely impossible with without the Alinker." So. That it just expands your range because you feel different. It's not just what it does to your body; it's also how it makes you feel.
Yeah. Many
people report that they're not depressed anymore. 80% of people with disabilities are using antidepressants. 80%.
You've got a sort of celebrity endorsement from Selma Blair, who is it's notable that she developed MS, and she's been really outgoing about having MS and talking, about, some of the challenges of that. And she's an Alinker user too, right?
Yeah. And she refers to it as a game changer. She said, it literally changed my life, the whole trajectory in MS the moment I got on the Alinker.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Getting back to sort of the design of the device, I mean, it's a 3-wheel vehicle.
Yeah.
With a lot of like complexity to the design because, like one, you have this small sort of back wheel to kind of get it out of the way of someone's feet moving. And there's a lot of thought into, how does this thing go up a hill? How does this thing go down a hill? Can you speak to some of the challenges that you had in designing it that, that weren't obvious at first?
Well, I looked a lot at current devices and how people are using it. And most used is the rollator, and what you see is people hunched over the rollator. Mm-hmm. So I translated that to like people try to get rid of their weight, the weight bearing on their legs.
Right.
So I was like, oh, you need to put people on a seat. Coming from the Netherlands, that would be a bike seat. and so how do you get to walk on a bike seat? Like walking while being supported with something up your bum, and that's a bike seat because that allows you to still walk, and then at that height put an arch underneath it so you're at the height that the saddle needs to have for you to be able to walk. And then wheels, 2 wheels, that would be a little bit tricky. 3 wheels, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. You'd kick into something, so the 2 wheels need to be in the front, 1 in the back. The 1 in the back that needs to be small because if you kick it with your ankle, it doesn't ride over your ankle. If the wheel is too big, you would ride over your ankle. And the 2 wheels in the front needs to be big so you can take thresholds easier, right? Because the tipping point of the wheel is half at the point of the axle. So that's 16-inch wheels in the front, an 8-inch wheel in the back. And then you realize, 2 wheels in the front, that's really difficult to engineer because if you parallel steer them, they start bouncing. People don't see that. And the simpler the design looks, generally it means that there's a lot of engineering that went in there to make it look that simple.
Simple is very hard.
Simple is very hard. And people don't get that. Why is it so expensive? It's like, well, let me explain that to you. Without trying to defend it, because we know what goes into it.
It's a cool design, and I think that there is an importance to design.
Sure.
And like you definitely brought a lot of it to it. And I think, you spoke to me before about empathy and design. And I think, the product shows that. It's sort of, I think, when I look at the Alinker, it's a product that's designed for the whole person, not for the disability, like you say.
We're not a body with a problem. We're whole human beings that want to be active and engaged. And ultimately, as I'm aging, I'm 60 now, what do I have in my future that I can use?
We all end up with a disability of some sort.
Exactly. So
whether it's eyes or ears or mobility or whatever.
So ultimately, I'm happy that the Alinker is there, because that's the only thing that I would want to use if something with my mobility would be challenged. So ultimately, I chose myself as the user, like what would I want to use when I get older or when something happens to me? And yeah, something yellow at least.
There might be a couple other colors you could add in there.
No, just yellow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're not going to miss it.
And keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. That's so Dutch.
Yeah, exactly. Why overcomplicate
Stylish
it?
and simple. There is a cost to this, and it can be a little expensive. That to say is a lot of assistive technology tends to be very expensive.
Yes.
And the problem is a lot of folks who are in this situation, do have oftentimes limited incomes and things like that. And I know, you've made, the product available in a lot of different ways to sort of address some of those issues too.
Many people ask, is insurance covering this?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with insurance is that you need to sell it through a certified supplier.
Mm-hmm.
And the certified suppliers, that whole system works in such way that now we're selling the Alinker for $2,500-ish. And if I were to sell it through certified suppliers, it would probably go up 2-3 times the price. Because all the margin that's taken up by...
Everybody needs a piece.
Everybody needs a piece, and then the insurance would pay maybe half of it. And I always say, like, we're already selling it for less than half. So, and if you see it, we made a movie, a little video about how 40 suppliers, how we source from 43 suppliers, actually, all the parts that go into the Alinker, and then how it's being assembled. First, you got the frame makers. It's all hand welded because there are 5 centimeter pipes, 2-inch pipes. It's all hand welded, then hand aligned. Then the frames go to the paint factory. All the logos and decals, they're all put in by hand. then it's painted and it's secured, and then you have to clean it in between, and then it goes to the assembly plant, and then all the parts that are custom parts. The only parts that are not custom is the steering bar with the holder of the steering bar and the seat and the seat pen. All the rest of the parts, we make them. Also the wheels, because the wheels are baby stroller wheels, but they're not, because our wheels have 32 spokes in it, because the lateral strength that or stability that you need to have in the wheels requires a little bit more than 16 spokes that you have on baby stroller. So we hand spoke the hubs, the wheelchair hubs that have a quick release system in the thing, into a special rim that can hold 32 spokes. Little things like that, I can see them, I know them.
Yeah.
But people don't necessarily see that. The back wheel, now we have developed that. You need to create a mold, the tooling, the rubber, the testing. What kind of rubber do you need to get sort of that thing without the wear and the tear? Like, it is a huge process. To every part is a huge process. There's enormous tooling involved with the forged parts. There's an extrusion bit, the ring around the frame. And so the whole process of 43 suppliers that come together in 3 manufacturing plants before it actually ends up in the box, most of it is manual work.
Yeah.
People have no idea. And we're paying people well. We make sure that everybody in the supply chain is treated well. And then sometimes I get the comment from people like, why do I have to pay for that? Yeah, I'm just like, well, who else is going to pay for that? And is it okay to mistreat people just because you want a cheaper product? I don't live in that world. So we make sure that everybody in the supply chain is treated well, has at least minimum income in their country, in Taiwan, that there's air and water treatment plants, that they've got their safety gear, all that stuff has to be in place. I do not want to produce anything else. And I want to be more than carbon neutral. In the whole process, we've not that planting trees is the only holy grail, but we are more than carbon neutral because we planted over 80,000 trees so far.
You guys are a B Corp too,
we're a B Corp,
so
yeah.
I mean that's a really amazing thing as well. So that's fitting within the mission that you've outlined.
We just recertified. So we've been a certified B Corp for 6 years, which means we're not just measuring in making money for our shareholders, but also measure in the impact, social and environmental impact that we have with everything that we do. And that is completely embedded in the DNA of this company.
Getting back to, sort of how do you get one of these if you can't afford it? You do have a couple other ways for people to get it, even though you don't take insurance, right?
I get it, $2,500, but in the world of devices, we're really selling it not. We're actually probably not asking enough in the retail for what we need as a company.
Right.
So we're selling it cheaper than we should, actually. That is one thing. And then if you're driven into poverty by the sick care system and how that works, we understand that. That's a whole different issue. The Alinker is not expensive, yet it is a lot of money if you don't have the money. Very different issues, and it's good
Two different concepts, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very good to separate that, because one is like, why are you so expensive? It's like, no, the issue is, why did society drive you into poverty that you don't even have the $2,500 to give you your life back?
Yeah.
That should be the question. So how we try to bridge that is to make the Alinker available for what I say, the price that we can sell it for to still have a company, to be able to do this.
Right.
We have a 0% rent to own, and we do campaigns with people. We were the first company ever to integrate a crowdfunding platform in our website. The rent to own works this way, that you pay for 4 months of rent, and if you get to test the Alinker 4 months, and if you keep it, then you pay 8 equal payments. It's actually a sort of hidden payment plan, but with an initial threshold, because I don't want people to just tag on something to the monthly cost and further participate in or help people to drive further into incredible credit card bills. So there's an initial threshold of that 4 months rent. If that is a problem, then please go and do a campaign with us. Right. And I'm still surprised and continue to be surprised how generous this community is. There's not one campaigner that fails with us. You can't say that out loud, because I don't want people to count on that, because you do have to activate your community and everybody around you. But the thing is that we have 242 campaigns completed right now. That's 242 people that would have never been able to get an Alinker. And through a community, it's incredible.
In the disability community, there's a lot of folks a lot of grassroots kinds of organizations that are helping people get things like this. I know, like, there's a couple a differently abled couple, they go by the handle of Squirmy and Grubs on on YouTube, but Shane, who is disabled, he's got a muscular atrophy sort of challenge, and Hannah, his wife, who is fully abled, They run a lot of campaigns. They have one, Shane has one that's Laughing at My Nightmare, which helps to raise money to put people on assistive devices. Maybe that's a good one for you to, connect with.
I'll check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they may be, the Alinkers might be a great thing to get in their purview.
With a little difference though, and it's not just semantics, but language is really important. We don't help people.
Sure.
We have a platform and people help themselves. And I don't see doing a crowdfunding campaign as asking for help. I see a crowdfunding campaign, like we have so isolated people with disabilities that we as temporarily able-bodied people actually don't know how that life is. What happens to you once you're dependent on the sick care system. We're so isolated from that. So when people do a campaign, in all their generosity, they share what life looks like once you get a diagnosis with MS and what you're faced with. And then we can learn and show up with generosity to help them complete their campaigns. It's based on sharing in generosity. And that creates a community, because I learn things every day when I look at those campaigns and the stories that people are willing to share. And it's not easy to share your vulnerable story out there, but they do that in all generosity. And we become better people because we give. If you give without the transactional, I give you something, you give me something back, without a transactional thing, but you give with generosity, I become happier, I become a better human being. We are generous creatures that really love giving, and we have completely lost that.
Yeah. But all the happiness studies always say that, life of, service to others is what makes people genuinely happy. Yeah. So you must be really happy.
I'm very happy. And it's not helping people, the top-down sort of power dynamic, like, oh, I'm helping you. Like, who the fuck am I that I can say that I can help you? All I'm doing is helping myself. By giving to a campaign, I become happier. So I'm not helping the other person, I'm actually helping myself. When I went to Kenya the first time, I was in the slums in Kisumu, and people said, oh, it's so amazing that you come and help us. And I was like, I'm not helping you. I was unhappy in the Netherlands. I come here to make myself happier. If I'm happy, I can be a better contributor to a community that I'm just part in. You know something, I know something. Together we're super happy because we're both happy. Now we can do really good things together. But it's not because I'm coming here to help you. I do not help people. Sometimes people say, B, you saved my life with the Alinker. It's like, with all respect, but please do not put that on me. I did not save your life. You got on the Alinker. There's millions of people that do not get on the Alinker. They can, but they chose not to.
You make an important point about the power of language. And when we talk about this subject, I did an interview with Pete, which is part of the U.S. Department of Labor's initiative around assistive technology. And, it was a real eye-opener for me because the language that I was using, I mean, we had to stop all the time because it's like, well, you shouldn't say that. And here's why. And it was, in some ways unconscious, on my part, but it sort of astounded me how embedded in our culture and our language all of this is. And how, we dismiss people in our language all the time without even really thinking it through.
But look around how we are conditioned with everything. Like kids, for example, they go curious to a wheelchair. It's like, oh, what is this? This is cool. And then the parents are like, oh, don't do that. So they're learning that clearly there's something wrong with people in a wheelchair. They're scary. You shouldn't talk to them.
Right.
That's taught behavior. Like the curiosity of kids, there's nothing wrong with, because it's real.
Yeah. If
they say, oh, what's wrong with you because you're using a wheelchair, then they must have listened to their parents before they actually say that. But, we're constantly conditioned with all the stuff that we see online, with all the advertisement is embedded with messages that condition us constantly.
Yeah.
So language is a very powerful tool, because I can use language to manipulate you to buy something. That's advertisement, right? And so you have to be very mindful about the language that you're using, how you're using it, to who you're using what. Because all our language that we use without awareness is colonized language. And it's discriminatory, it divides people because that serves systems, you know. So yes, it's really important to become aware of all the words that we're using, all the language that we're using, how and when.
I knew we were going to go off in a whole lot of directions when we started talking, but I love it. You're awesome. Always enjoy talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing with us.
My pleasure, Chris. Really,
the Alinker, but sort of life philosophy and all of that in a time when I think a lot of people need more of that. Mm-hmm. So thanks for doing what you do. And thanks so much for being on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, it is a pivotal time that we are in. So it is important that we decide who we want to be in this time, because we're alive here at this moment for a reason. I don't believe this is coincidental that all the stuff outside is happening and we're here just because of incident. It is important. We're needed here, and we need to be mindful in who we are and how we are upholding systems that abuse or creating something new. Creating something new in kindness and generosity with each other. And that's the choice.
Well, thank you
that
so
I made.
much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, please give us a like. Think about subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.